Tervetuloa vaan tänne meidän Rakkaudesta vapauteen näyttelyn ensimmäiseen esitelmään. Meillä on tänään paikalla Claudia Walde kertomassa tyylin konseptista. Claudia,
Yes? Yeah, okay, everybody can hear me. I'm not used to speaking to microphones, but anyways. Okay, so I asked before, Joni, Terry, who's coming to this lecture and to this talk, and it was actually pretty difficult for everybody to say. So I was in a kind of a difficult situation. Am I going to talk to people who know a lot about graffiti, or am I talking to people who don't know anything about graffiti? So I try to find a way in between, which is quite hard. So if there's something you don't understand, please ask. And if you know everything about it and you're bored, please don't snore too loudly. So okay. So when you hear the word style, like when you ask random people, they usually think of this fashion style. You know, like you have a certain style, how you walk around, or you have a style of cooking, or whatever, something that distinguishes you from other people, basically. In the graffiti culture, it's something special because everybody needs their own style, but style itself also means the name that you choose. So it also means the characters, the letters. So when we look back at the history of graffiti, there was this guy, Taki 183, who started tagging, not very nicely. So because it was not about style. In this moment it was really only about becoming famous and just writing your name everywhere. Wherever I have been traveling, I came to places, for example, to the Cape of Good Hope. It was really interesting. There is this sign that points in all the directions worldwide and where you can see how far everything is. And this whole, like the whole pole was scribbled with names. You could see names from like people from all over the world there. And that's basically what Taki did, because we all have the urge to tell whoever we were here. And that's not about, you know, showing somebody, I can write my name explicitly beautiful. It's really about just saying, here I am. And that's how graffiti started, basically. But then, step by step, there were so many names everywhere that you couldn't tell anymore, okay, who is this? Like, there was just this mass and this flood of tags and of names, so you needed to do something special to stand out. And that's when style started. So here you can see an old Dondi piece. It's a classic blockbuster piece. So you see already that the name was styled in a certain way, that you had like a certain string, colors, then a background was added. And then basically this whole idea of style and calling also a graffiti piece or a name a style basically started. So there's a couple of different styles these days. So you have the classic blockbusters or bubble letters. This is a piece from Tilt. He became pretty famous for his bubble letters. So meaning that it looks like like a bubble. Everything is round, everything is soft. 3D pieces, that's I guess the pioneer of 3D piecing is Dime. Delta and Lumic were also pioneers in the 3D, the letter forms. Dime started doing this in the end of the 90s, early 2000s, when he started doing 3D letters. And it was very interesting to see when I traveled the world, everybody suddenly tried to draw outlines and do things in 3D. The problem was that most people don't have an understanding of the three-dimensional space, so usually it looked really horrible, I must say. Especially interestingly enough, in the UK it was very popular to copy dime pieces in a very bad way. Anyway, so he's he's still around. He's still pushing the boundaries, doing things in 3D, and this was definitely also something that happened in the new century. Then this is wild style, and well, Reebok is a guy from original Los Angeles, and what was special about his crew, the MSK, was that they just used tons and tons of elements, different graphic elements, a lot of lines. Even for somebody who's experienced with graffiti letters, it's really hard to read wild styles, and especially the things that him and his crew did. And there it was actually also, let's say, a kind of a style already that you added a lot of lines. So it was not necessarily the legibility anymore that it was about. Then we have semi-wild styles. This is Ken too. He's a crewmate of mine, and he kind of took the classic New York block letters and gave them a bit more swing. So it's always quite easy to read. Does anybody here feel like they can't read it? Can you try to find the letters? There's the first one is a C, then an A, then an N, a T, a W, and an O. Can too. Yeah? So I think this is still legible. But of course there's also quite a lot of little elements that don't really, well, let's say make sense. They don't build a letter, but they give the whole name more movement. Then you had something that was called the anti-style, which I found very funny. It was very popular also in Berlin in the early 2000s. When people tried to paint, when they were right-handed, they tried to paint with their left hand. And they said, like, I'm not going to sketch anything. I'm just trying to paint the worst piece you can imagine. And that's a style also. So I always thought it's funny because they just look for something new. They tried to not make a style, and they came up with this idea of anti-style. So again, it was a style. Sorry to disappoint you, but yeah. And yeah, the idea of anti-style is really to paint as ugly as you can. So that's a challenge too, I guess. Now we come to my book, actually. When I traveled the globe, talked to people, especially passers-by, I was always a bit disappointed that people would enjoy street art a lot, because it's all about figurative things, about characters that have eyes and a nose and a mouth and that people can immediately recognize. But people always saw graffiti letters just as vandalism. Graffiti pieces were just vandalism, and nobody even took the time to look anymore. And when I tried to find out why, it was, of course, for one thing, the media always says, yeah, it's bad. So it's kind of a, well, copying what the media says. But on the other hand, I could really realize that people just were not able to read what was written there, and also didn't have like the key to see the differences in the letters and also in the different styles. So I wanted to pioneer in this field a little bit. Actually, I was supposed to make my PhD in graffiti lettering. I actually already got a place as a PhD student at the university, but I dropped out in the end because I thought it will again be too theoretically, because I really want to give a key to random people and not just to academic people. And so I decided to write the book in a way that everybody understands it, with a lot of pictures. So I asked friends and graffiti artists from all over the world to write in their style the whole alphabet, so that everybody has the chance to compare the different styles. So in the book you have 2 pages. On the right side there's always the alphabet. You always have all the letters of the alphabet, and then you can just flip through it and compare. And that way you have a key. For one thing, you can see all the letters. Usually they are in an order. Some of them didn't use the order, but anyways, to make it difficult. But in general, it was really like that you can get a feeling, at least for the movement and for the personality of the letters. So here's one page, the Can2 page again. So you always have on the right side the alphabet, and then on the left side they're the pieces that they usually paint. So you can see that it's totally, it's definitely the same kind of style. But you have the key to really read the letters and compare it with other people's pieces. And what I tried was to have as much variety as possible, so that really the people understand and also cherish all the versatile things that are out there. So this is Zet from the Netherlands. He also works with the third dimension, but as you can see, it's more like Lego style. I call it. So then we have Aske of Six Systems. He's working very graphically. So you can also see this in his piece. So if you see his alphabet and on the left side, maybe you can read this. It is an ASCII actually. He added an I in there. ASKIE. Then this is Sein. He's also from Germany. Also very graphic. And as you can see, when you look through the alphabet, you can still recognize the letters. It gets more and more difficult, but then we have Claudia Walde. This is Vibes from Great Britain. Or Toast, again, very graphic, from Switzerland. Or Dare, who had like the perfect match for semi-Waldes. This is, I should have turned this page. But yeah, so I just wanted to show you like the variety of styles that really exists there, so that you have a feeling of style. Another thing about style is, for one thing, of course, you try to make the name that you chose as beautiful or as ugly as you can to stand out from the masses. But then there's always these little elements, especially here in the their alphabet, or maybe I show you another one because this is upside down. So let me go back to, for example, Cat2. So, I just go here. So, for example, you have this little thing going away from the sea. That doesn't make sense. There's no reason for it. But when you see his pieces on the other side, like here, you also have this thing here going out. And what happens if you leave this? The sea still looks nice, and you can read it, but with this, it gets much more energy. So it's really like enhancing the speed of the letter itself. So it does become part of the style, even though it's not necessarily needed for the piece. And that's something very typical about the graffiti culture as well. So yeah, this is a very rough idea to give you about style. And now I just wanted to ask you how you see graffiti letters, what you are missing to understand it, and or if there is something that you might want me to answer to you about the idea of style. I'm very curious because especially for those people who are sitting here who probably haven't painted graffiti styles yet.
When I see graffiti, I don't see any reason to read it, to understand. It's picture.
Yeah.
And because I don't know the person who's done it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I see, the same person's works, but to me it's I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't need to.
Yeah. Just a question back from my side. If it wasn't the letters, if you would see a face there, for example, a portrait of a person, and you see it everywhere again, would that make a difference for you?
No. I'm happy that you found that your picture because it's just a painting. But it gives me joy, the colors, and
Yeah.
I don't follow. I don't follow artists. I just
Have a look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So that definitely is a thing about the graffiti culture. I've also heard that a lot from galleries in the past and so on. They're like, yeah, you're just writing your name, but what more do you tell us with it, And in the end, I think that graffiti styles, that's basically like a self-portrait, just in a different way. But it's very egoistic. Totally. That's all about, look, here I am, and that's how I look, or that's the kind of person I am. And actually also in the past, like, I mean, graffiti is here for more than 50 years now, which is quite crazy, and I'm very happy that finally something happens and it develops in a different way as well, for example, abstraction. But in general, it's really about, you know, having the feeling of showing somebody that they are there, you know. And I think for random people who are not speaking this language, who are not really interested in finding all these pieces somewhere again, it is really about the style, that you might find something also yourself that you think is joyful because it's very energetic or dynamic. But I must really say there is not more a message than a name, mostly. Yeah.
I'm wondering how much of the scrambling of the letters and how much of the hiding of the name itself is intentional within the graffiti culture, or is it just like a side effect of the evolution of the different styles?
Mm-hmm.
But or how much, because graffiti culture embodies this kind of underground thematics and so on. So is it how much is it intentional to hide it from the public, so to speak, from those who are not the writers?
Yeah. I think actually through the years it became very intentional.
Yeah.
That it is really, for many, many years I think that graffiti was really like this little closed space, and the people were really communicating with each other but not with the public. I think that especially the first trains that I showed you from the graffiti artists in New York, like here, back then it was a bit different, because then the people were really like painting Christmas themes and talking to the public, also writing messages about the mayor, whatever was happening in New York. So it spoke to kind of everybody. But the bigger this whole movement became, I think the less important it was to really communicate with the public. And I think that's also what is good now, that this changes again through exhibitions, through street art also, how this evolved. But you're definitely right. This was very intentional. Very often also the wild style letters, because even for me sometimes it is hard to read certain wild styles. So of course it's a challenge for every artist or graffiti artist themselves to see how far they can push it. That you can still just read the letter, but it's so illegible that unlegible that it's really hard. But yeah. It is not for the public.
Yeah, as a further question, how much of it is, like, in your opinion, how much of it is like this playful challenging of making a challenge to other artists to read the letters, or how much of it is like hiding it intentionally from the public? If you get my difference from, I appreciate both styles actually, but
I think it's more. I think. Like shutting out the public is not that important.
Yeah.
It became part of it, but I don't think it's really like that important, really. Because even the more or less simple letters, very often people cannot read, or they don't try to read it, you know. So, yeah.
Like there was an account too in that picture. I'm just trying to figure out what are some ways of making the letters pop out to come out. Yeah. You can show it through the this one, for example. Yeah, or the other one maybe.
The alphabet.
Yeah, the alphabet. Yeah.
This one. Yeah. Well, for one thing, there's a classic way of approaching a graffiti piece. Meaning, first you sketch, then you fill in a certain color. So, I just go here. So, for example, Kentu very often has these color fades. So here we have it from like the turquoise, greenish, yellow to white. And then what really makes it stand out is with outlining it. So he uses like a dark color to really separate the letters, to separate it also from the background, so that you can really read, okay, this is the A. If you drop the outlines, it will be much harder to read. And that's basically what I did. Like in the beginning, I started abstracting by dropping the outlines and seeing what happens if I just use the fill-in colors and don't use these typical frames around it, like this kind of cartoonish style. And of course also Dime did that with his 3D pieces. And that is much more difficult because then you have to find a way to distinguish the letters, there it is, just with different shades of colors. So that's of course much more advanced. And but the classic graffiti way is really you paint a fill-in and you outline it just like a cartoon. Like this is the, let's say, easiest way. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Because I'm always really impressed by the complexity and self-discipline of larger pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the kind of availability of legal walls or how this whole scene's shifted to galleries is how people develop?
Yeah. The legal walls are just, I always call it opportunities, not necessarily legal walls, because there's a wide range of opportunities, meaning exhibitions, walls, murals, also commission jobs for brands if you want, studio spaces, whatever kind of space is needed to develop. You know, and I think there a lot of graffiti writers have started in a way, as I just said, with a fill-in and outlines and just kind of cartoonish letters, and maybe even illegal work, because also my way was like that, because there were no legal walls. So what can you do? If you have this interest and you want to try, then you have to paint something illegal, even if it's in a place nobody cares about. But yeah, and I think in this way, legal walls are very important. So you can really figure out your own potential. You can try things. You have the time. I think it's very important for every artist to have time in some kind of way. Even if you don't want to use the time and want to paint very fast, also fine. But knowing that you can actually really try things is very important to find out which artist you actually are. So I could definitely see that also in countries, let's say Argentina. They have very, well, I don't think they even have anti-graffiti laws there at all. So it's all painted, the people are very positive about it, and there's so much potential coming out of South America these days. And I think also in the future, like the people there will be really changing something in the movement. It's much more figurative, much more colorful, different colors, and you can still really say that something is from South America, if it's not too influenced by Instagram and Facebook though. Yeah, I think that you can really see that, you know, or let's say Scandinavia, where things were really restricted for a long time. I spend a lot of times in Norway every year, and I can really see that the bombing side, meaning the illegal side, and everything that is fast is really big there. But the quality of things is quite low, because there is just no opportunity to develop something better. You know? So yeah, it is very important.
Have you made mural paintings? Do you like paint something that presents something, not graffiti writing?
Yeah, actually it's funny because we had this discussion today with friends. What is a graffiti piece and when is it a mural? So where is the limit? Like when is it a mural? Where does it start? Because a mural usually is a painted wall, so every little painted wall could be a mural. But I think nowadays we understand a mural as being something really big. And I think my first really big wall I have painted in 2006, so that's a bit more than 10 years now. And I must say that this is quite different from painting smaller walls, because with the smaller walls, a part of the style also is your physical movement, like how you paint. You have to run around the wall, or if you paint like this, it's also possible. And you will see it. You will see it in the end result, how it looks. But on the murals, there's no way. You have to paint like this, you know? And you have to reach spaces. And if you want to paint a 5 meter long line, nobody's 5 meters has 5 meters long arms, not even Yoni. So you have no choice but running along the wall or driving the lift upside down. And this also does something to your style and how it will look like. Definitely. And I realized that when I started painting so big, that I actually, if I want to catch this energy and this dynamics and the power of the piece and what my style is, I actually have to paint it in small scale first, and then just scale it up and copy this thing that I painted small. So also what you see outdoors here is based on a canvas I painted in my studio. So I usually have either a watercolor piece, a small one, or a canvas that is based and that I paint my murals after. Otherwise I would never get the same energy into the murals. Yeah. More questions? Yes, first you and then
Okay. How you see the graffiti influence to graphic designing? Because when I saw one Fanta advertisement, there was like outlines, highlights, drop shadows, things like that, and it still looks like Fanta logo. So, is there any influence, or has the graffiti stole all the ideas from out?
I mean, everything that is in public space, and especially when there's so much attention on it, will influence something else. And graphic design is very tightly involved with also graffiti. And I have so many friends who are graffiti artists who are graphic designers. So naturally, also they take what they usually do back into the offices and use that also in campaigns and so on. You know, so it's not necessarily that you see advertisements stealing from graffiti. It's very often the people themselves who actually do it and use what they already can do. I don't see it as such a big problem, to be honest, because it has always been like this, and every art form in some way has been used in advertisement as well. But I don't think it will really influence the art form or the art movement itself in the future. So.
Yeah, I actually think that you touched upon something really important there with the, I mean, even though the names themselves, painting graffiti names and so on, they don't carry a message, as you said. They still carry a message by themselves about public spaces and the use of public spaces. Do you see, like, is there any, like, how do I say, like, intentional or determined way for graffiti to actually make people question that advertisement versus art and this dichotomy and so on, and like, is there any movement that tries to actually do that? I know about the anti-advertisement culture, but
there was something like the Billboard Liberation Front, for example, they were called in the US, and they took over. But you also had this movement in the graffiti culture. But I don't think that there's really like particularly a movement where people really call themselves to. But maybe, I mean, I don't think there's really like an intentional concept, you know. But for example, the One Up crew, they're so big and they are everywhere, and they are taking over public spaces and places where you would never imagine it, and also taking over advertising spaces and everything. I think in many ways you could definitely call that a concept, but it's not an intentional concept. I don't think that they have sit down with, I don't know, 50 people saying like, we are going to start this movement and we are going to, you know, change art history in this way. It was really about, all right, we are going to be the biggest crew and we are going to be up everywhere. That was the intention behind it, you know. But it became something like that. As you said, unintentionally, of course, graffiti is also political, meaning taking spaces back and so on and so forth. Yeah. But there's not a movement that I can remember right now that would really like, make this their message or whatever. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Well, this is about more like sociological question. How do you think that influence to graffiti writers because they are kind of outcasts? They need to hide and paint secretly. And then when they're coming to museum, yesterday I was wondering that people doesn't want to like show up like I made this and be proud of it. How do you think, is it very widely so that graffiti writers are like kind of a low self-esteem of being public, they don't want to do that, or what is it?
I think that's a very psychological question. But who is starting to paint and has the urge to write "I was here"? You know, it's somebody who might have like some disadvantages somewhere else in life. For example, me, I was an outcast because I grew up in Africa. I came back to East Germany and I was a total outsider. Everybody was like, who is this? You know, so I had no friends. And I, very early in my life, I experienced being the one who's strange and alien. So being a woman, for example, in a male-dominated scene was not so special. I knew that feeling already. So I think that definitely is a part of it, meaning that you feel comfortable within this space and within your letters, because usually you show your art and not yourself. And you don't have to look good, nice, whatever. You can be black, white, big, small, whatever. It doesn't matter. And then when you are suddenly in this space and you're connected with your work, that is quite strange. And I had to go through this too, because in the beginning nobody knew I'm even a girl, you know. So and then step by step people know you, they recognize you, and especially when I published my first book, I actually had to make a choice. Do I publish it under my real name or not? And that already was so strange, seeing my real name in bookstores. It was really, really hard. Like it took a year until I got used to that. Because yeah, you will feel comfortable hiding behind yourself, basically. So yeah, it is definitely a certain type of people that is, you know, drawn to this. But in general, I think artists are all people with intense feelings in some way. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that it's good time to end here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a little something for you, but I don't know where it is. Oh, yes. Okay, please. So, thank you, Claudia. It's been really fun for having you here for 2 weeks. More? 2 weeks?
2.5.
2.5.
Oh my God.
You have given us so much joy. You have been so easygoing, and we have really enjoyed working with you.
Thank you.
And you have given us energy, color, joy, power, and now also knowledge. So thank you for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you have a small shirt for her, and you can also have bigger ones if you want. Very nice. So, and something else you.
And something for vandalism.
Yeah.
Vandalizing the kids' room.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming. Ikävä kyllä teillä ei ole nyt aikaa kysyä enempää. Meillä lähtee taksi tuonne lentokentälle ja Claudia siirtyy seuraaviin puuhiin. Mutta Claudian kirjaa saa täältä myöhemmin. Yritimme tilata sitä avajaisiin, mutta Stenson Hudson teki iharit, mutta sitten ensi viikolta varmaan jossain vaiheessa. Kiitokset.